Yo, what's going on, everybody? Trent's Tech here. Today, this is my 2 week later review of the S22 Ultra. So, I've had it for 2 weeks, and this is basically everything that I can think of to cover about the phone. So, let's talk about the first thing, battery life. To me, to me, battery life has been good on this phone. Now, I haven't done like any of the traditional tests where, you plug it up, you sit there, you run a bunch of apps, and you come up with how long it takes for the battery to drain because honestly, those tests aren't exactly that accurate, right? Because it depends on Wi Fi, it depends on what apps you run, it depends on how long you run the apps, and you really can't even test the same thing if you're on, let's say, LTE or 5G because everybody else's reception and coverage and companies, they're all different. So there's really no way for me to replicate that. All I can say is if you are a heavy user, and I would consider myself to be a heavy user, you get good battery life for heavy use. However, my definition of good battery life may not be your definition of good battery life. I might have to charge this thing once a day because I'm constantly doing multiple different things on it. Um, all the social media apps, sometimes recording videos. I have my refresh rate at 120 hertz. I use the quad HD or whatnot. So obviously, I am pushing the phone. So I kind of expect to have to charge the phone maybe once a day. But the other thing is, I don't exactly charge my phone every night. I'm kind of like a lazy person when it comes to charging my phone. So, yeah, battery life for the way that I live and for the way that I move is fine on the S22 Ultra. So, that's basically where I can leave it with the whole battery life part. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But as far as I'm concerned, 5,000 milliamp hour battery is good on here. Yes, the 13 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max does have better battery life, but I really don't think that that matters when you're talking to people because if you're an Android person, you're going to pick an Android phone. If you're an Apple person, you're going to pick an iPhone. So I don't think it really matters that this has better overall battery life than this does. You're not picking a phone solely based on the battery life. Now, moving on to the screen or the display, as we all can see here. I love this display. This display is one of the best displays I've ever seen in my entire life. And I can't exactly say it's the quote unquote best display because I'm pretty sure there's something else out there. There's always another one, but so far, this is it for me. The 120 hertz is smooth on here. It feels really nice. There are a couple of apps that don't necessarily take advantage of it that well, and it can be a little choppy. But pretty much everything else, at least all the Samsung apps, most of the games that I play, Pokemon Go, Call of Duty, and other stuff, they're completely fine with the refresh rate on this phone. Really haven't experienced too many issues with the screen or whatnot. The brightness on this phone is really good. If you go outside into direct sunlight and you turn this thing all the way up, you will definitely be able to see it. So whatever little Samsung magic or whatever they were talking about at the event where it's got like the auto dimming zones or whatever, I didn't exactly look to see how accurate it was. I just pull out my phone just to look at the phone and, see stuff, whether it's watching a YouTube video, sending a text, or answering a phone call. All I know is I can see this thing in direct sunlight, which really, really helps. Also, the adaptive brightness on this screen is really, really good. When I was coming from the Pixel 6 Pro and the Pixel 6, one of the issues that I had with that phone was that the adaptive brightness seemed to be kind of all over the place. But with the S22 Ultra, if you do turn on the adaptive brightness and kind of let it do its own thing, it's really good. Like I can't even lie, it's really good. And to kind of circle back around to the battery life, one thing that you will notice with this phone, and I've seen this kind of go throughout YouTube and the internet, is A lot of people complain about the battery life of the phone on day one. And what I've noticed is that whatever Samsung's adaptive learning technology or whatever, it needs more than a day to figure out how to tune itself to how you use your phone. So if you use the phone, use it for about, let's say, I'd give it about at least 3 to 4 days at a minimum, sometimes up to a week for Samsung to really figure out how to use your phone and how to optimize everything. Because it seemed like to me when you got the phone out the box, the battery life was kind of weak. And then over time, as I started using it more and more, I learned the phone, it started to learn me. The battery life seemed to improve. So definitely if you're picking one of these up, just make sure you do that. The other thing that's impressive about this phone, I think it's impressive. You may not think it's impressive, but I think it's impressive, is the sound. The sound out of this phone is great. The sound out of the phone sometimes beats my 13 Pro Max, and sometimes I don't even realize how loud this thing can get. Sometimes, I know there were some people talking about there being possibly a sound or speaker issue. I am not an audiophile. I am not tuned to audio. But for me, if I'm working on something or doing whatever and I don't have headphones and I just want to blast some music, this is perfectly fine. This is perfectly fine. Having this tiny little speaker array at the bottom and having the front speaker grill at the top and it playing in stereo mode, definitely 100% love it. And like I said, it gets plenty loud and the sound is kind of rich, in my opinion. I don't know anything about bass or treble or anything like that. You can go watch someone else's review on a full sound review. But in my opinion, if you have this phone and all you have is just a sound, you'll be fine. I've had phone calls on speaker, and most of the time when you get a phone and you switch it over to a speaker call, the I guess sound coming out of it isn't always as good as you think. I've been able to have speaker phone calls on here and be perfectly fine. They were loud enough. They didn't get like ridiculously distorted. I've actually had some speaker phone calls on here where I don't know what's going on, but I would actually have to put the speaker closer to my ear to actually hear what was going on. So maybe this beats this as far as speakerphone quality. I don't know if anybody tests that, but that's just something that I've noticed. The other thing about this phone that we absolutely have to address, the S Pen. The S Pen makes this phone, okay? In my opinion, the S Pen makes this phone more than the cameras do. And it's a unique thing because the S Pen is for some people, whereas the S Pen is not for some people. There are some times I caught myself using the phone and still being used to just using my finger for everything. And I would sometimes forget about the S Pen. But then when I would go to use the S Pen, I'm like, oh man, I should be using this so much more. There's so many options. Taking, quick little notes really helps. The other day when I was, working at my job, I actually needed to write something down. And normally I just carry pen and paper. But I remembered that my S22 Ultra has an S Pen. As soon as I took the S Pen out, started writing stuff down, I just became hooked to it. And now I got a bunch of notes in my phone. And I'm kind of really glad that I went with the S22 Ultra instead of the S22 Plus. So yeah, definitely the S Pen, being able to take pictures with the S Pen, being able to do volume controls up and down, left and right. And these are awesome videos I'm going to do later on showing people how to do this, but this is just a whole brain dump of everything that's in my head about this phone. And also, since I did mention cameras, the 40 megapixel camera that's on the front of this phone should have been on the S22 Plus, okay? The S22 Plus, I believe, has like a 10 or 12 megapixel camera, where this one has 40 megapixels. This one stomps the S22 Plus. Like, it's not even funny. It's not even close how good the front-facing camera is on here. And I wish Samsung would have had that across their lineup. I really don't know that much about photo accuracy or anything. All I know is that when I take out this phone and I shoot a selfie picture, it looks good, and I'm totally happy with it. Cameras on the back. I'm absolutely glad to have a telephoto camera. I remember back in the day, there was this whole discussion between telephoto, wide angle, which one do you need more? And honestly, I need telephoto more. It's nice to have a wide angle camera, but I feel like the wide angle camera kind of got played out a little bit too quickly. I remember back in the day when LG had a wide angle camera and nobody cared about it. And then all of a sudden, Apple got a wide angle camera, then Samsung got a wide angle camera, and then everybody had to have a wide angle camera. And somewhere along the line, to me, the wide angle camera wasn't all that special anymore. The fact that I can pull out this phone and I can take pictures of stuff from a distance and not have to encroach on anybody or get within their space is really awesome. There's been plenty of times where my kid has been playing and I wanted to take a picture of him and him doing stuff. And one thing that most kids hate, I'm sorry if you guys don't realize this. Most kids don't like it if you get up in their face with your cell phone camera. Okay? They want to do their own thing. Some kids may like it, but most kids are just like, "Dad, let me go ahead and play." With this phone, I could just pull it out and I could be sitting in my driveway and taking pictures of my kid and not bothering him at all. Now, the other thing that we could probably talk about is the shutter lag, since we mentioned kids. There is a noticeable shutter lag. So when you go to, take the picture, from when you press the button down on the shutter and let it go, it can lag. However, it's something that you can work around. Is it 100% the greatest camera on earth? I don't think so. But I don't think any camera is the greatest camera. There are pluses and minuses to the 13 Pro Max cameras. There are pluses and minuses to the S22 Ultra camera. There are pluses and minuses to the old iPhone 11 Pro Max. So basically, you just have to learn to work with the camera that you have. Obviously, if that's something that is a big issue to you, don't go towards the S22 Ultra. But for me, it is definitely not a huge issue. The other thing about the cameras, and this is me coming from an iPhone where you don't have that many options, and coming to a S22 Ultra, I absolutely love that there is a pro mode on this phone. I'm glad that there's a mode that you can either, just do everything in auto and let the phone choose everything, or if you want to use the pro mode and you want to tweak all your settings and all that stuff, you can do that as well. And pretty much, in my opinion, S22 Ultra Video is a very close competitor to iPhone video. And the reason why I say that is, if you record something on the S22 Ultra, you record something on a 13 Pro Max, and if you show the footage to someone who's not a cinematographer, to someone who's not a YouTuber, anyone will like the video out of either one of these phones. If you use the S22 Ultra to record or 13 Pro Max, people will like the video. They won't sit there and pick out all these little crazy things that we do as YouTubers. Regular people will love the video out of this. I know everybody is, calls the iPhone it's the best phone. It's the best video on an iPhone. I'm pretty sure I could record some video on here and you wouldn't know the difference between these two, unless, like I said, you are a YouTuber digging really deep into all this other crazy stuff. 8K on here is nice at I think it's like 8K at 24 frames per second. Some people prefer 30 frames per second. I think at some point Samsung should give people the option to choose between 8K 24 and 8K 30. But as far as I'm concerned, the 8K 24 on here is good. The one area where I think it needs some improvement is that whatever OnePlus did with their 8K and their sensor, they were able to get 8K at a wide angle. Now, I have no real knowledge, like no depth into sensor technology and all that stuff, so you guys can correct me down in the comments. But if the S23 Ultra could pull off the same 8K wide angle, when I'm saying S23, I'm talking about next year. If they could pull off that same 8K wide angle, that'd be really awesome. 8K on this phone it looks really, really good. The only time it starts to look bad is when you zoom in past, let's say, 2x. Like 1x is good, 2x is good, 4x is like kind of pushing it. Like you kind of don't know. 6x is like, okay, it's like pixelated city. It doesn't matter how much light that you have. It's very pixelated, but you can zoom in pretty far and still have some somewhat usable video out of it. The rest of the phone, the charging, honestly, I don't think I bought a 45-watt charger. I just use whatever USB-C charger I have available. So some days it's a 15 watt, 20 watt, 35 watt, whatever. Honestly, I plug this thing up for an hour and then I take it off and I go. Like, I really don't think about the charging speed that much. A lot of people said that you don't need more than a 25-watt charger. And honestly, I think you'll be fine with the 25-watt charger. As far as how the whole charging things go with 45 watts and all that stuff, you're not going to be able to charge this phone at 45 watts completely. Like, that's not the way the charging works. You'll initially get your 45 watts, but it will slow down as the battery fills up. So if anybody's worried about that, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. That's just the way the phone is designed. And that's the way that they, set things up to maximize the battery life. You do not want to run 45 watts through this phone from 0 all the way up to 100. So that's just the way it goes. The only other thing about the battery, and this is kind of referring back to OnePlus, is I wish they would do the split cell. So basically take the cell and split it in half and have each half of the battery charge at 30 watts. And basically you could get up to that 65 watt charging. My girlfriend has a OnePlus Pro 9 or OnePlus 9 Pro, however you say that one. And sometimes I get a little bit jealous, even though I don't care about charging that much. Sometimes I get a little bit jealous when, let's say her phone's at like 10%, she could just plug it up and not even 30 minutes later, she can walk out the door with a full charge. So I would like to be able to do the same thing, but I know that's not something that everybody's going to be into. I guess the final part about this phone, and this is more or less me coming majority from an iPhone to an S22 Ultra, is I love the freedom that I have with this phone, and I love the customization. If you have an iPhone, most people don't really care about customization. Most people just want to use the phone, and they want the phone to do all the heavy lifting for them. I completely respect that. However, I completely love the fact that on here, if I want to, I can pretty much do whatever I want. Like, if I have options that I want to pick on here, I can go ahead and choose those. I can even have a live wallpaper. And I love this live wallpaper. I totally love it. And it's one of the best things about the phone. I still have I got a fingerprint scanner on here that unlocks just that quickly. On here, I'm stuck with Face ID. On here, you can do face unlock. So yeah, right now, especially with the whole, wearing a mask thing and all the other crazy stuff, definitely like the finger unlock on the screen here. I personally would prefer if there was a fingerprint sensor on the power button here. I believe like they do on the Fold 3, but that's just my personal preference. I'm still glad to have a fingerprint sensor. The fingerprint sensor on here is an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. And to me, this fingerprint sensor hits every single time and it does not miss. As I've documented in the past, when I had the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, I did have some fingerprint unlock issues. And that was basically, I believe, because it was an optical fingerprint reader instead of an ultrasonic. So definitely if we have ultrasonic on more phones, that would be great. But for me, this fingerprint sensor is good to go. Also, once again, coming from an iPhone, And I'm sorry that this video is dragging on, but this is a review and I just wanted to get all this stuff out. Coming from an iPhone, having an always on display on this phone is really nice. Pretty much if I ever want to find out anything about this phone, it'll wake up, but it's going to turn on the entire screen. And some people might like that, but I think, having to turn on the entire screen just to see something is a little ridiculous, but that's just me. The other thing about this phone that I really like is the battery indicator at the bottom. So I don't know if you guys can see that exactly, but there is a battery indicator that tells you how much percentage that you have left. Also, if you plug up the phone, it'll tell you approximately how long it's going to charge. Now, some people may debate like, oh, it's not completely accurate or it might be a little bit off. Well, it's better than just randomly guessing with this phone. With this phone, you plug it in, you're just like, okay, whenever it turns green, that's when I'll know that it's done. Whereas here, it's a little bit more accurate. So that is just another thing that I like. Now, I do carry both of these phones. I've used both of these phones throughout the day, and I really don't have this whole thing where I'm like, this phone is better than this phone. Like, obviously, they both do different things well, and both of them kind of struggle at certain things. However, Siri is trash compared to Google Assistant, okay? Google Assistant on the S22 Ultra just mollywops Siri all day long. It's not even close. There's some times where I'll pick up my iPhone, I'm like, Siri, blah, 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 whatever. And she's like, oh, well, here's a place where you can go to look that up. Whereas with Google Assistant just tell you right away. So that's one thing that I prefer in this phone over this one. And at some point, I'm going to figure out which phone I want to use more. Right now, I'm kind of leaning more towards the S22 Ultra, but I still have some things on the 13 Pro Max that are kind of keeping me around. One of those is being iMessage. Another one of those is LumaFusion, and a couple of other things that I do and that I use for my channel. One random small little tidbit is that when I'm creating my videos, if I want to share the link on Twitter, I will use my iPhone, because if I hit the share the link, it will include the title, it will include the link, and it will include everything. Whereas on Android, if I try and do the same thing, it'll only put the link into Twitter. Yes, I know that's small and minuscule or whatever, but it's something that I noticed and it's something I take into consideration. This video honestly could go on for an hour. I could dig down so deep into both of these phones, but I think for the majority of you guys watching this video, you're basically trying to figure out, is this a good buy? I would say that this is a good buy if you're coming from a Note 8, a Note 9, possibly a Note 10. And the reason why I say Note 10 is because a Note 10 you can still use. Like, you can get them on Amazon for like $400 and you would be good. You don't have to spend $1,200 on this. However, I think the S Pen improvements and the battery improvements are enough to go from a Note 10 to an S22 Ultra. If you have a Note 20, I think you can probably wait one more year. If you want to upgrade, go ahead and upgrade. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. I really don't believe that there's a need to go from an S22 Ultra to, there's not a need to go from an S21 Ultra to an S22 Ultra unless you absolutely want that S Pen. So that would be like my recommendations as far as buying. Price, honestly, you could find, different options out there if you're paying $1,200 out of pocket. There are imports available. However, if you're in the U.S. and you have available to that U.S. financing and you're going to go through your carrier and you have no intentions on leaving your carrier, most of you guys are probably going to take the 0% free financing or whatever super trade-ins that you're going to get here. However, my one gripe with the pricing is that I got my S22 Ultra. It's the 256 model, and I got it for the base model price. So after that promotion is over, Samsung is going to be selling the regular 8 gigabyte, 128 gig storage model for their base price, and you're going to have to pay more to get the 256. I think that that's not exactly the best deal, and I just wish Samsung would have just left the pricing alone. But like I said, that promotion is going to end. So if you can get a 256, get one while you can. Otherwise, you may get a 128 and be stuck with only 8 gigs of RAM instead of having 12 gigs of RAM. There's a whole nother discussion for another day about the difference between 8 and 12 gigs. But in my opinion, if you're spending that much money, I want to get as much out of the phone as I possibly can. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. That is my big, long review with almost no B-roll in it. So hopefully, if you guys stuck around, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But if you have any questions, just put them in the comment section below, and I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. So, all right, y'all, take it easy. See y'all in the next one. Peace.